The file had been sealed for 19 years when the call came through. At first, it didn't sound like much, just another missing person resurfacing in a flood of unsolved cases. But when Special Agent Marcus Hale heard the name Elena Porter, his stomach tightened. He knew that name. Everyone who'd worked in the Virginia Bureau back in 2006 did. The dispatcher's voice over the line was calm. Too calm. Caller says she found something near the old train yard in Buchanan County. Says it belongs to the girl who disappeared the night the logs were changed. Marcus turned his chair toward the window of his small Quantico office. The rain outside dragged down the edges of the glass like thin gray wires. He hadn't thought about Elena Porter in years, not since the investigation fell apart under the weight of missing evidence and a local police department that wanted the story buried. Back then, Elena was 22, a nursing student, vanished after calling 911 from her car on a back road that connected the college campus to her parents' farmhouse. The call lasted 47 seconds. The transcript said she'd reported a man following her. The next line was static. Then lentilla. 3 days later, her car was found on the shoulder near a bridge. Engine still warm. Purse inside. Driver's door open. The logs showed the call had come in at 10:18 p.m. But 2 weeks later, when the FBI asked for the original dispatch recordings, the time was listed as 11:40 by a 1-hour gap that no one could explain. Marcus still remembered the smell of wet asphalt that night, the flicker of cruiser lights on the water, and the way the sheriff at the time, Raymond Tull, avoided eye contact every time the recorder was mentioned. Now, almost 2 decades later, that same sheriff was dead, and someone had sent an anonymous tip to the Bureau. Attached was a photo of the old call center screen from 2006. The timestamp read 10:18 p.m., exactly as Marcus had written in his notes all those years ago. The email had no name, no traceable address, but the message under the image was short. They changed more than the logs. Marcus printed the picture, ran a thumb over the pixelated numbers, and took a deep breath. He'd spent years chasing newer cases, watching the Bureau shift toward digital crimes, cybersecurity, fraud. But this was the kind of mystery that didn't fade. It waited. By the time he reached Buchanan County, the town looked smaller, half-shuttered. The old diner on Main Street had a new name. The gas station where Elena's boyfriend had worked was gone, replaced by a self-storage lot. Yet the same unease hung in the air, a quiet tension that grew heavier the closer he got to the old police substation. Inside, a single desk lamp lit the watch commander's office. A new chief now, young, cautious. Her name was Captain Renee Stokes. She looked up when Marcus showed his credentials and gestured toward a box on the desk. "This came in from evidence storage last week," she said, "found behind some old vehicle logs. No record of transfer, no signature." Marcus opened the box. Inside was a cracked Nokia phone in an evidence bag, its label faded. "Porter, E." The captain exhaled. "The thing is, this wasn't listed on any of our inventories. We've gone through 3 audits since the merger, and that phone was never logged." Marcus stared at it. The last time he'd seen that model was in a grainy photograph from the night Elena disappeared. He remembered the boyfriend saying she always kept it in her coat pocket, right next to her ID. "What made you call the Bureau?" he asked. She hesitated. "Because the phone wasn't dead. We charged it. There was 1 voicemail left." The room went still. Marcus looked up. "And?" "It's dated the night she vanished. She paused. But it's time-stamped 11:45. He leaned closer, heart steady but heavy. Play it. The captain pressed a key. A faint hiss filled the room, followed by a woman's voice, quiet, trembling. Please, someone's here. I called before, but they said it didn't go through. Please, hurry. Then a sound, a thud, metal scraping against gravel, and a second voice, low and sharp. You weren't supposed to call again. The recording cut. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Outside, thunder rolled across the hills. Marcus felt the old anger surface, the frustration of being told to stand down when the Bureau had tried to reopen the case back in 2008. They said the logs were corrupted, he muttered. But someone made sure they stayed that way. He looked at the captain. Who had access to the system back then? 2 dispatchers, both retired. One moved to Florida, the other's still here, lives near the edge of town. Name's Dana Ross. Marcus nodded slowly. I'll need to speak with her tonight. He signed the chain of custody form, slipped the phone into his bag, and stepped out into the parking lot. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick and cold. As he started the car, he replayed the voicemail in his head. The static, the fear, the voice at the end. He'd heard something in it, a tone he couldn't place. But it wasn't a stranger's. It was familiar. He didn't know yet that by reopening that box, he'd uncover a trail that reached far beyond a small-town cover-up. That night, the past started moving again, piece by piece, and it would not stop until someone finally told the truth about what really happened to Elena Porter. Dana Ross lived in a small blue house on the edge of Buchanan County, the kind of place that looked frozen in time. Wind chimes hung from the porch, a flag with faded stars curled in the November wind. Her mailbox was half buried in fallen leaves, and the blinds were drawn even though the sun had barely gone down. Marcus parked at the end of the driveway and took a slow breath before walking up. He'd met dozens of retired dispatchers in his career, people who carried the weight of other people's emergencies. But Dana's name had always come up in the 2006 case as someone who did her job and kept her head down. That was bureau language for someone who didn't ask questions. When she opened the door, she looked smaller than he remembered from the old photographs. Gray hair in a tight bun, a cardigan buttoned all the way up. She recognized the badge before he said anything. I knew this day would come, she said quietly. I saw your name on the report. Marcus held up the photo of the old call log. You remember this? Her eyes flicked over it. Too well. He waited. Silence stretched between them until she stepped aside and nodded toward the living room. The house smelled faintly of coffee and dust. On the mantel sat framed photos. 2 kids, a husband in uniform. Marcus noticed the flag folded neatly in a triangle. My husband passed in 2012, she said, sitting down. Lung cancer. The department sent flowers. Marcus nodded gently. You were the night dispatcher the week Elena Porter disappeared. You logged her 911 call. She pressed her lips together. I logged the call that was left in the system, yes, but that wasn't the first one. He leaned forward. Go on. Her eyes were tired, glassy. She called twice. The first call came in at 10:18. She said someone was following her down Route 19. I remember the panic in her voice. I asked for her location, and she gave a cross street near the bridge. I radioed a patrol unit, and Sergeant Tull acknowledged. I watched the signal blink red to green. Marcus felt a pulse of cold travel through his chest. Then what happened? About 20 minutes later, I got a visit." She looked down at her hands. "Sheriff Tull himself walked into dispatch. He told me to step away from the board and grab a coffee. When I came back, the call was gone." Marcus sat still, letting her words sink in. "They told me later the system glitched," she continued, "that it must have dropped. But I saw him typing. I saw the cursor move. The time changed from 10:18 to 11:45. Then he re-uploaded the file with the same call ID. Why didn't you report it?" She gave a bitter laugh. "To who? He was the sheriff. My husband worked under him. We all knew what happened to people who crossed him." Marcus nodded slowly. "Did you tell anyone after he died?" "I tried," she said. "About a year later, I contacted an agent at the bureau, left a voicemail. No one called me back." "Who did you speak to?" She looked at him, and he already knew the answer. "You," she said. Marcus froze. "That was you?" She nodded. "You said you'd call back, but then they closed the case." He felt the sting of memory. An anonymous tip left on his desk years ago, a missing tape that never turned up. At the time, he was told to move on. Now he understood why it vanished from the system. He took out the photo of the phone found in storage. "Do you recognize this?" Her face paled. "That's hers. I logged it into evidence myself." "It disappeared." "I know. The night after the logs were changed, Tull had me pull every item related to the Porter case. Said the Bureau was stepping in, and he needed to streamline the record. I boxed everything, signed it, and left it in the evidence room. The next morning, half the items were gone. The phone, the dash cam tape, the bridge patrol report." Marcus leaned back. "Do you still have access to the building?" "No, but I kept a copy of the original report." She rose and walked to a cabinet. From inside, she pulled a thin brown envelope. The paper was yellowed and slightly warped from time. She handed it over carefully, as if it were glass. Marcus unfolded it. The top page read, "Incident log, 10/14/2006. Dispatcher, Ross, D. The timestamp, 10:18 p.m. Incoming mobile call from Porter, E." Below that were notes written in pen. Caller reports being followed by male subject in dark pickup truck. Headlights flashing intermittently. Requests immediate assistance. Unit 12 en route. Sergeant Tull. Marcus looked up. "This handwriting, yours?" "Yes. I kept the carbon copy." He felt a deep ache in his chest. 19 years of silence, and here it was, in ink, in her own hand. Proof that the first call existed. "Dana," he said carefully, "do you know who the male subject might have been?" Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I didn't then, but I do now." He waited. She glanced toward the window, as if afraid someone might be listening. After the case was buried, Tull's nephew got a job at the salvage yard near the bridge. A year later, they drained part of the river for repairs. They found a bumper from a truck wedged in the mud. It matched his license plate. Marcus's pulse quickened. "Was that ever reported?" "Not officially," she said. "But everyone in town knew. He left a few months later. Changed his name. I heard he works up north somewhere." Marcus folded the report carefully. "Do you remember his name before he left?" She hesitated. "Evan Tull." The name hit like a stone. Marcus had seen it before, in the personnel records of a neighboring county's police department. A patrol officer, later promoted to detective. He stood. "Thank you, Dana. This helps more than you know." As he stepped outside, the cold air hit him hard. He looked back at the house, where the curtains had already drawn shut again. On the drive back, the image of Elena's cracked phone kept flashing in his mind. The timestamp, the second voice, the missing hour. He couldn't shake the thought that maybe the cover-up hadn't just been about corruption. Maybe it had been about keeping something much darker buried. When he reached his motel, he opened his laptop and searched the national database. Evan Tull appeared 3 states away, now working as a private security consultant. The file photo showed a man in his 30s, sharp jawline, close-cropped hair, wearing a smirk that looked too much like his uncle's. Marcus sat back and stared at the screen. The old sheriff had changed the logs. The nephew had disappeared from town, and a girl's last words had been trapped in a phone that wasn't supposed to exist. Somewhere in that triangle lay the truth. He closed the laptop and turned off the light, but the sound of that final voicemail, the voice saying, "You weren't supposed to call again," would not leave his head. By morning, he knew what he had to do. He was going to find Evan Tull, and for the first time in 19 years, someone in Buchanan County was going to tell the truth. Marcus drove north through the early fog, the kind that turned the road into a gray tunnel and made headlights blur into long white threads. He didn't listen to the radio. He didn't need to. Every mile between Buchanan County and Richmond played out like a reel of ghosts. The call log, the missing tape, the fear in Elena's voice. Evan Tull now lived under a new name, Evan Reese, according to public records. Private security consultant, subcontractor for industrial sites. The kind of job that didn't require questions about the past. He had an address just outside of Roanoke, a modest 2-story rental backed by woods. Marcus drove straight there. He parked a block away and watched the house from behind his windshield. The windows were dark, curtains drawn. A pickup truck sat in the driveway, black, late model, with a dented front bumper. It wasn't the same truck from 2006, but the sight of it still tightened Marcus's chest. Around 9 a.m., the front door opened. Evan stepped out, tall and solid, wearing a gray hoodie and jeans. He carried himself like a man who'd learned to scan for exits. Marcus waited until he got into his truck, then followed from a distance as he drove into town. Evan parked behind a small diner. Marcus walked in 5 minutes later, flashed his badge to the waitress, and sat 2 booths down. The place smelled of burnt coffee and grease. Evan looked up when Marcus slid into the seat across from him. He didn't flinch, didn't ask how he'd been found, just leaned back and smiled, like someone who'd already rehearsed this moment. "Been a long time since Buchanan County," Marcus said quietly. "Didn't think the Bureau still cared about small-town ghosts," Evan replied. His voice was smooth, low. "We care when people alter evidence." Evan's smile faded. "That was my uncle's mess, not mine. You were on Route 19 the night Elena Porter vanished. That's what you think." Marcus reached into his jacket and laid a photo on the table, the bumper recovered from the river, partial license plate still visible. Evan glanced at it once and shrugged. "Coincidence." "You left town 2 weeks later," Marcus said. "Your uncle covered the logs, then took a medical leave. You expect me to believe none of that had to do with her?" Evan leaned forward. "You want to know what really happened that night? Then stop pretending you don't already know why the FBI walked away the first time." Marcus didn't move. "Try me." Evan's tone shifted, colder now. She wasn't supposed to die. She was supposed to disappear quietly. Somebody else made sure that didn't happen. The words hung there, Marcus studied his face. Who? Evan's eyes flicked toward the window. Check the file again. You'll see there's a report missing from the bridge patrol. One that didn't go through the county. Someone higher up took it. Federal? Evan smirked. You tell me. You're the one who works for them. Before Marcus could push further, Evan stood and dropped a few bills on the table. You're digging into a hole that was sealed for a reason. Then he walked out, leaving Marcus staring at the steam rising off his untouched coffee. Later that afternoon, Marcus returned to Quantico. He pulled Elena Porter's case file from the archives again, flipping through every page until he found the original submission forms. One caught his eye. Bridge surveillance footage, October 14, 2006. Transfer, FBI Technical Division, Washington Field Office. The signature line was blank. Marcus frowned. That footage was never in the Bureau's records. He checked the transfer logs. No such file existed under that date. Whoever had signed it had done so under a false code. He made a call to the Bureau's Technical Division. After several transfers, an older agent named Wexler picked up. This is Hale, Cold Case Unit, Marcus said. I'm trying to locate a file. Bridge surveillance from Buchanan County, 2006. Supposedly transferred under your division. There was a long pause. That file doesn't exist, Wexler said. It's listed in a signed report. Then someone forged the report. Marcus's jaw tightened. Who handled incoming evidence transfers back then? Wexler hesitated. A few names, but there was a contractor we used briefly. Local liaison for rural jurisdictions. Name was Tull. Sheriff Raymond Tull. Marcus went silent. You still there? Wexler asked. Yeah, Marcus said quietly. I'm here. He hung up, staring at the wall. The old sheriff hadn't just altered the logs. He'd fed the Bureau false evidence directly. That explained why the investigation went nowhere, why the local file vanished, and the federal trail went cold. But it also meant someone else had seen that tape. Someone who'd decided to keep it buried. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his apartment, replaying the voicemail again, this time with noise cancellation headphones. He boosted the background gain, isolating every fragment of sound. At the 5-second mark, right before Elena said, "Please hurry," there was something faint, a tone like a 2-note beep. Dispatch systems didn't make that sound, but dash cams did. He froze the waveform, isolated the echo, and ran it against the Bureau's archived dash cam signatures from that era. One match appeared. Unit 12, Sergeant Tull. The recording hadn't been from Elena's phone. It had been from his cruiser. Marcus exhaled slowly, his throat dry. If the voicemail came from the sheriff's own dash cam, someone had transferred it to her phone before planting it back into evidence, which meant someone wanted it to surface now. He checked the metadata again. The voicemail's creation date was recent, just 3 weeks ago. Someone had reactivated that phone. Someone still watching. He closed his laptop and looked out the window. The street outside was quiet, but a car idled 2 blocks down, headlights off. Marcus turned off the lights, moved to the side of the window, and waited. The car didn't move for almost 5 minutes. Then it pulled away slowly, taillights vanishing into the mist. He knew then that reopening Elena's case hadn't just disturbed a forgotten file. It had stirred something that was still alive. And someone, somewhere, was making sure he didn't live long enough to finish what had started 19 years ago. Marcus didn't tell anyone at Quantico about the car. He didn't mention the file transfer or the altered voicemail metadata. In his line of work, you learned quickly that some truths were too dangerous to share until you had proof. Real proof. 2 days later, he drove back to Buchanan County with a warrant for access to the old evidence storage facility. The sheriff's department had been consolidated since the early 2000s, but the old brick substation still stood off County Road 17, half abandoned, windows boarded, weeds pushing through the lot. Inside, the air was cold and dry. His flashlight beam caught dust swirling like smoke. Rows of file cabinets stretched down the narrow hall, all tagged and numbered in fading ink. He found the section marked 2005-2008. Drawer after drawer, page after page, he dug through reports that had long stopped mattering. Petty thefts, DUIs, break-ins. Then, tucked behind a mislabeled folder marked Vehicle Impound, he found a brown envelope stamped Restricted. Do not transfer. Inside were 3 photographs. A shot of the bridge the night Elena disappeared, the road glistening under floodlights. A close-up of a black pickup, half submerged near the bank. And a still frame from a video feed. Elena's car, parked at the shoulder, her driver's door open, a shadow standing beside it. Marcus stared at the last photo. The figure wasn't wearing a deputy's uniform. It looked like plain clothes. Dark jacket, baseball cap. The timestamp on the frame read 10:19 p.m. He took the photo to the current sheriff, Renee Stokes, that afternoon. She leaned over her desk, studying it under the lamp. That's definitely the bridge, but this isn't in our archives. It was hidden, Marcus said, locked inside a mislabeled drawer. Someone didn't want it found. Do you think this is your missing footage? It's part of it. The original video was supposed to go to the Bureau. It never made it. Renee frowned. If this came from the dash cam, the rest might still be somewhere on the department's old hard drives. They were never wiped, just archived. Marcus followed her down a hallway into the IT room. Rows of humming servers, half of them unplugged. She pointed to a gray tower unit in the corner. That's the oldest one we've got. If you're lucky, it'll still boot. After an hour of patient coaxing, the machine came to life. Marcus scrolled through directories until he found a folder labeled Backup 1L1.406. Inside were 2 video files. The first was corrupted. The second played. Static. Then the sound of rain. A dash cam view from a cruiser following a narrow road. A female voice came through faintly on the radio. Elena's. I'm near the bridge. He's still behind me. Please! The connection cut. The camera caught headlights ahead. Her car pulled to the side. A man stepped into frame, walking toward her. He reached her door. She opened it slightly. Then, suddenly, another pair of headlights appeared, coming from behind the sheriff's cruiser. The camera jostled. Voices shouted. The footage glitched, then went black. Marcus froze the frame, rolled it back, and enhanced the section showing the second car. A white sedan. The license plate was half visible. H249B Sen. He scribbled it down and turned to Renee. Can you run this plate? She typed into the system, brow furrowing. That plate was registered to the Virginia Department of Transportation, assigned to a state vehicle under an agent named... She stopped. Marcus waited. Who? She turned the screen. Special Agent Martin Wexler. For a moment, neither spoke. Marcus felt his stomach sink. Wexler, the same man he'd spoken to days earlier, the one who said the file never existed. Pull up his record, Marcus said. Renee scrolled. Transferred to Washington Field Office 2005. Oversaw evidence intake from local departments until 2008. Retired in 2010. Current address, Arlington. Marcus exhaled. He lied to me. He was there that night. Do you think he's the one who reactivated the phone? Renee asked. Either him or someone working with him. Whoever sent that photo of the log wanted to drag this back into the light, but not because of justice. They're cleaning up loose ends. Renee leaned back. You're not seriously going after him alone. Marcus didn't answer. That night he drove straight to Arlington. Wexler's house sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, brick, single story, with a flagpole out front and a motion light that flicked on as Marcus approached. He knocked once. No answer. He knocked again, louder. After a moment, the door creaked open. Wexler stood there, older now, heavier, but the same sharp eyes. You shouldn't have come here, Wexler said softly. I think you were on that bridge, Marcus replied. The older man sighed, stepping aside. Then come in. If you've come this far, you deserve to hear it. The house smelled faintly of tobacco and old paper. Wexler led him into a den stacked with file boxes. She wasn't supposed to die, he said quietly, echoing Evan's words. We were investigating a trafficking ring that ran through Buchanan County. Truckers, night stops, small routes off I-81. Elena saw something she shouldn't have. We put her under informal protection. Tull was our contact. Marcus felt his pulse spike. So she was an informant? Yes, but Tull panicked. He thought she'd blown his cover. When she called 911, it triggered the wrong response. By the time we got there, it was chaos. He tried to silence her, and I tried to stop him. You were in the white sedan. Wexler nodded. I was. The dash cam caught it all. I took the tape before his deputies could. But the Bureau didn't want exposure. They said it would compromise an ongoing operation. They told me to bury it. And you did. I thought it would die with him. But someone found the copy. Someone who wants me gone. Marcus stared at him. Who? Wexler's hand trembled slightly as he reached into a folder and pulled out a printed email. It was short, unsigned. You should have burned the tape. We finish what you started. No sender, no trace. They've been watching me for weeks, Wexler said. I didn't reopen that phone. I thought you did. Before Marcus could respond, a low hum filled the air outside. A car engine idling. Wexler's eyes darted to the window. Too late, he whispered. A sharp crack split the silence. The glass shattered. Wexler stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. Marcus dropped to the floor, pulling his gun, crawling toward the window. He saw headlights flash once before the car sped away. He pressed his phone to his ear. Shots fired! Arlington, send units to 4531 Maple Drive. Wexler was slumped against the wall, blood spreading down his shirt. The tape, he gasped. Bridge footage. I kept the original. Locker 117, Arlington Archives. Hold on, Marcus said, pressing his jacket against the wound. Help's coming. Wexler's eyes fluttered. Find it before they do. Then his breathing slowed, and the room went still, except for the sirens rising in the distance. Marcus sat there, heart pounding, surrounded by the pieces of a story that had been buried too long. If the tape still existed, it could finally prove what happened to Elena Porter, and who had spent nearly 2 decades erasing her from the record. But whoever had fired that shot was already one step ahead. The archives were locked behind 3 levels of clearance. Marcus knew that breaking into them without approval could end his career. But after Wexler's death, procedure didn't mean much. He filed an urgent request, citing an active risk of evidence destruction, then drove through the pre-dawn quiet toward the Arlington Federal Storage Facility. The lot was nearly empty when he arrived. A lone guard sat in a booth, flipping through a newspaper. Marcus showed his credentials, signed in, and walked through the long concrete corridor that smelled faintly of oil and dust. Rows of numbered lockers lined the walls, thousands of them, each containing fragments of stories that had once mattered to someone. Locker 117 was near the back. It was old and rusted, the label half peeled away. He turned the key Wexler had slipped into the folder before he died. Inside was a single metal case marked Bridge Footage, 10-1406. Marcus lifted it carefully. The latch creaked as he opened it. Inside lay a mini DV tape, dated the night Elena vanished. No official FBI label, just Wexler's handwriting. Copy 1. He took it to a viewing station in the back corner. The monitor flickered to life, static crawling across the screen before an image appeared. It was the bridge again. Rain, headlights, the faint echo of tires on wet pavement. A timestamp, 10:18 p.m. Elena's voice came through clearly now. "Please, he's still behind me." The camera panned slightly, showing her car pulling over. A black pickup stopped behind her. A man stepped out. Sheriff Tull. He approached her door, said something inaudible, and reached inside. She struggled, tried to push him away. He shouted something, and then, for a moment, the frame went blurry as another vehicle approached. A white sedan. It stopped behind Tull's cruiser. Wexler got out, running toward them. You could hear him yelling, "Ray, stop!" Tull turned, raising his gun. A shot rang out. The camera jolted, but it caught the flash, the muzzle flare from the sheriff's weapon. When the frame steadied again, Elena had collapsed against the car. Wexler was kneeling beside her, shouting into his radio. Then another voice came through the static. A third man, off-screen. Deep. Calm. "It's done. Clean it up." The screen froze, then cut to black. Marcus sat there, gripping the sides of the monitor. He rewound the last 10 seconds, watching again. The third voice wasn't Tull or Wexler. It came from the direction of the sedan. He enhanced the audio, isolating the background. Under the hiss of rain, a faint reflection appeared in the side mirror of Wexler's car. A face. It took him a second to recognize it. Evan Tull. He was younger then, barely 20, standing by the sedan's door, watching it all happen. Marcus leaned back, his heart pounding. Evan hadn't been a bystander. He'd been there from the start. Part of the operation Wexler mentioned. The reason the Bureau buried the file. He copied the footage to a flash drive, sealed the case, and signed the locker's re-entry log under his ID. But when he walked back into the corridor, the security lights flickered once, twice, then went out. A shadow moved at the far end of the hall. Marcus reached for his gun. "FBI, identify yourself." No answer. He took a step forward, flashlight cutting through the dark. The door at the end of the corridor creaked open, letting in a slice of cold air. Whoever it was, they were already gone. He ran to the lot. The guard booth was empty. The newspaper lay open on the desk, still fluttering. Outside the gate, fresh tire tracks cut through the mud. Marcus didn't chase them. He knew who it was. 2 hours later, back at headquarters, he handed the flash drive to the Bureau's Internal Affairs Unit. He spent the next 6 hours under questioning, recounting every detail. Dana's confession, Evan's disappearance, Wexler's shooting. When they reviewed the footage, the room went silent. By dawn, arrest warrants were issued for Evan Reese, formerly Evan Tull. But he was gone. His house was empty. His truck abandoned near the West Virginia border. In the passenger seat, they found a burned cell phone and a single printed photo. Elena Porter, smiling in her nursing scrubs. On the back was a line written in black ink, "They'll never believe it." The case made headlines for a week, then faded. The Bureau called it an internal investigation into evidence mismanagement. The public never saw the footage. Officially, Sheriff Raymond Tull was labeled a corrupt officer who'd acted alone. Marcus knew better. He went back to Buchanan County one last time that winter. The bridge had been rebuilt. New guardrails, fresh asphalt. No sign of the night that had haunted that stretch of road for nearly 2 decades. He parked at the shoulder where Elena's car once sat. The air was still. He played the recovered voicemail one more time. The trembling voice, the plea for help, the sound of gravel, the final, terrible silence. Then he closed his eyes and whispered, "You're not forgotten." In the Bureau's archives, the case was reclassified as Cold Case 1742A, reopened. Elena Porter's name was finally written in ink again. And somewhere, in a quiet corner of West Virginia, a man who once went by Evan Tull watched the headlines fade from the glow of a motel television. He smiled, then switched off the light. If you liked this story, please subscribe to the channel for more true crime mysteries.